Well, hello there. We are back, as we are. And today is Sunday for me, so today is Everyday Miracle Story. I know some people may say, wow, that's not really an everyday miracle, but what if it could be? For some, it would be. So, oops, I seem to be showing off that fuzz I have sometimes. Anyway, we are here, and we require a little bit of knowledge of some sort. I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about the way that we're working with miracles and wishing them to be an everyday miracle with the small things. You'll see today kind of a cascade of them happening that helps a person get through something that they weren't sure they could get through. And in a sense, it's an everyday thing, but in a sense, God shows up. So, we have to keep our eyes open for those miracles. That's where I'm going to go today with this, is we required to be looking for the miracles of God. I mean, we breathe, that's a miracle. And people go, yes, but that's an everyday miracle, isn't it? It happens every day. But there are small things, that nice piece of, that nice shirt that you like, those small things. Because God is really good at the small things and the big things and the bigger things. Just never know where He's going to show up. So let's leave that there. Let's very simply go to start Eric at startclearing.me. Whoops, I did that one wrong. That's my website. Messing in with my email. Whoops. Let's try that again. Eric at starthealing.me. Eric at starthealing.me. Eric at starthealing.me. And we're working on some intro stuff. If I ever get my 2 cents and beans together, we will get there. Until then, you can just reach out to that email. Send me a link. Send me a link. Wow, I'm doing good today. Uh, Send me an email. I'll send you a link. You click on the link, you get an appointment, and we talk. That one's without charge. Just seeing if we're connectable and if I am a part of your healing puzzle. Let's find out. Please subscribe if you haven't. I don't really like doing those things, but I do require them. And I do require likes if you like to like it. If you like what you see, if you like what you hear, in this case, I suppose. Well, this is a human one today. And it's good because the story is a human story. There is a young girl and she is going to a meeting. She isn't quite sure of everything that's going on in that meeting, but she's been asked to answer any questions from her department connected to this meeting. She hasn't really had any help or stuff to give it to her, so she just has to go from what happens normally in her meeting. And that's not always easy for her because that isn't her position usually. It's another lady, and that lady is not available. She had something happen, so uh, this is somebody standing in that isn't sure about anything, really. But she's faith driven. She's understanding that God is going to show up for her and that she just has to go forward and speak about what's there and what happens and answer the questions. That's the best she can do. If she can't answer the question, then I'll have to wait till the other lady comes. That's the best she can do. And so she's getting ready early, of course, because that's the good thing to do. When you're going to present or be asked questions, you need to get to work early and kind of move through the material. That's what she believes, and that's what she's going to do. And she's not sure where this is going. That's her biggest issue. She feels a little unsettled, so she prays because that's what she would do. And as she prays, Father connects her very deeply with a rose. Even though it's November and it's snowing, this rose is still growing, apparently, and somehow showing up. Maybe it's an ice rose, but it's a rose. And she sees it as she's walking towards work. And she's quite enamored with the thing for some reason. God seems to have really locked her in. And so she listens and she looks at it very carefully, takes kind of a picture in her mind and wonders what that's about. And she's walking a little farther and, oh, there's one of our ads for our company. Isn't that interesting? On the way to work on a billboard. I didn't know we did billboards, but I guess we do. That's a good thing to know. Uh, and as she continues, now you gotta understand, each one of these is kind of a little bit of a what? Miracle, right? She's never seen the billboard before, and all of a sudden it's there. She don't remember an ice rose being there, but there it is. She goes a little farther, and there's a guy. She's never seen him before either. But he's selling a breakfast wrap that sounds pretty good, actually, considering she likes that type of food. And she goes, well, okay, I'll buy one. So she gets into a conversation with him, and he looks at her jacket, and it has the name of the company, and he goes, I really like your company for this. I wish your company could change that. That would make me much more of an eager customer to buy from you instead of someone else. Well, she thanks him and she gets her breakfast wrap and she's walking along and she's still got a bit to go. And this has been an interesting trip so far. You know, the rose, the billboard, now the man selling a breakfast. All she requires is a coffee. Oh, wouldn't you look at that? Down the road just a little ways is a special at her favorite coffee shop. And she walks in and she's, well, I've got a minute or two. I'm a little early. I'll grab a coffee. It'll be nice to have. It keeps me awake and makes me a little brighter, maybe. But she makes sure she gets, not a caffeinated one. She gets a decaffer and, gets all the fun bits and pieces because why not? She ends up with a triple chocolate latte and she's pretty happy about that. But as she's walking out, two people that don't look familiar to her are talking about something, and she just happens to overhear them. And they're talking about a meeting that sounds very much like her meeting, how they're going to undermine her entire section and their strategy. So she sits there and sips her coffee, turning away so they can't see the coat, and listens for a minute. And she learns some very interesting things about the way that they're going to do this. And that the episode of the person who usually leads this having to be at home today because she's having a little bit of well, the nasty runs, might also be revealed. So she continues on and she knows she's not drinking the coffee. Um, she already has one. It's a nice big one. It'll last her the whole meeting. So she'll be fine with that. She's still got a few blocks to go when she gets to a place and there's an ad again for her company. Sitting in a window, that's unusual, especially the type of shop this is. So she decides to go in and just do a little survey. She goes, I work for that company and in that department, and you have an ad for our product. How do you like our product? And the person there goes, well, I like your product very well. And, you know, it sells well. This is the only thing I'd like changed. And it has to do with the customer service and the people that I'm working with on this contract. I don't like them. I feel underhanded. And she goes, wow. So I will bring that up in the meeting. She said, I'm having it in about an hour and we'll see if we can get you a better rep. And the lady smiled and said, I really do like your product. I really do like the way that you create your product. It's just I may have to stop the product if these two that are looking after it um, don't change or they change. She was fine. But she's got all of this information, and you got to understand, every one of those is a miracle. Never happened to her before. She's walked that route every day, day in, day out, you know. Never ran into these opportunities before, and all of a sudden they're opening. And then the last one, just before she gets there, and you're sitting wood product shoes, that's what it is. The lady is very upset because she bought these shoes and they were really expensive and they're not comfortable. And she's having problems with them. Well, this little lady that's been walking along here knows about this issue, and it was already supposed to be redone, and apparently somebody hasn't redone it. But she knows how to fix it. So she says, "Ma'am, I'm a representative of the company. I'm very apologetic that this is happening to you. I thought this was fixed. Let me fix that for you." And she fixes the shoes, and they're much more comfortable. She goes, "Now that's what I expect from your company." And she goes, "Yes, that's also what I expect." She said, "This is my card, and that will lead to another person that is off today but will be on tomorrow. And she will give you a bit of a discount for your next pair. Thank you for being a loyal customer." And she goes, "I will continue now that these are fixed. These are very comfy now." And the she finally arrives at the building, checks in. She is a few minutes early still, so she sits down and writes down all that she learned. She learned about the rose. She didn't know why that was important, but God really concentrated her on that. So there you are. Then she had the billboard, which was really cool, uh, for her product. And she's never seen that before. She didn't know they were doing billboards. So she puts down, the billboard and the saying, and she said that's really catchy and it works well. And I think people are looking at it. She goes along and then shows the vendor and him wishing to use our products. People go, shoes? And she goes, well, it's not the only product we make. We also make some other things. And apparently, he also likes the men's shoes that we make. So, but he does have an issue. So let's address that. So she writes that down. And, then she talks about, then she gets the one about these two guys that are trying to undermine her. And she asks, you know, some interesting questions, writes those down. And then she makes a mention of this issue with the shoe that was supposed to be, put to production so that they could change what was making it uncomfortable and make the shoe very comfortable. So she writes that down. She also writes down a couple of other insights that God gives her. And then people start filing in. And she knew these two were coming. There they were. Even though she had never seen them before, they're probably salesmen. That's what she was feeling. And she would find out that she was correct. So the meeting goes along and it looks horrible for her. the shoes aren't selling. Nobody wants them. Maybe we need to drop that line completely. And, the salesman goes, I have a friend that's in shoes that wouldn't mind buying your patents. Of course, he'll be buying them at, you know, a lesser price because they aren't really selling all that well. He'll have to rework them. So that's expensive. But we're interested, the guy coming in the door says. And she looks up and she writes another little note. I've seen you at the coffee shop too. So she didn't know she was doing a presentation. She was supposed to be answering questions, but they put her on the spot and she said, sure. And she sends a little message to her head manager who's at home and say, I got this. God's got this. And she's also a fellow Christian. She goes, good, because I'm praying for you. She said, I think there's sabotage afoot. Oh, she goes, there's some. But she said, I've invited a couple of people to the meeting that are going to sit in the background that most people have never met. The owner and the new CEO that's just coming in to take over from the guy that's sabotaging the company right in front of me. She texts that. And the lady goes, ooh, this could get interesting. And she goes, well, God is showing me some things, and I think I'm going to be able to sort this all out, make the company stronger, get rid of the rogues that want to sell it off and break it up, and let them know some things that I think will really help. And so she had the meeting. And the meeting went as she expected. The guy kept trying to undermine her, and she answered questions. And at one point, he said, you don't even really understand how this all began. And she goes, oh, I do. And the owner is sitting back there, and the owner is not told too many people about how he got the idea for a lot of his products from studying roses. She said, let me tell you a story. It's very similar to the story of the owner, who is very similar to me. I was on the way to work today and I had a few extra moments, and there was this rose that really, it's an ice rose, I guess, because it was in bloom and it's November and it's cold out there. And it really fascinated me. So I spent about 15 minutes looking at this rose, and then I realized, oh, wait a minute. This has the potential to be used. It was just as a symbol, yeah, for our winter formal shoes that people use at offices. And we can sell that with, of course, the slide on for being out in the snow and stuff. And we can call it the Ice Rose line. She said, we've needed a new line of winter shoes for women. I think this would work very well. And she just continues. And she talks about, I've never seen the billboard before. I've walked that way many times. It must have just gone up. And the CEO is chuckling because that was his idea and that's why it's up. And she said a lot of people are looking at that and they're understanding that we're not just selling shoes, but we do other rubber products and other things like that. And she said that's a really well placed billboard. There's a lot of people going by there. She said me and a couple of hundred people walk by there, and most of them women, most of them looking for shoes that are comfortable. Now, I'll get to something else here in a minute. She said, after I passed the billboard, she said, I ran into a vendor that was selling a breakfast sandwich, I guess, rolled up. kind of nice. But he had an issue. And he really likes our products, our kitchen products, our rubber products that he uses to separate things. But they weren't quite wide enough. Now, he had already reached out to a rep, and the rep said that that could be handled, but never got back to him. And he wasn't quite upset at us. He was upset at our customer service and our reps. And she said, and I said that I would look into it and get it fixed. And that if he required a custom, well, he owns 20 carts. That's just one city. He's got many carts in many cities, and he requires this, and he's willing to pay for it, but somebody isn't getting back to him. That's not nice. And the two that had been trying to sabotage her were all of a sudden wiggling a little bit. And the guy that had been there to buy up the shoe company was realizing he wasn't going to. And she said, I was walking a little ways and I stopped to get a coffee because that was an awesome breakfast sandwich, but it had to have a coffee with it. And I was thinking, I'll treat myself because it's going to be a long day and I'll get a long cappy with three double chalk. Yeah, that's the way to go. And I heard an interesting conversation. We'll get back to that. And at this moment, the owner and the new CEO that's about to be introduced, and the old guy is about to go somewhere nicely, probably with a platinum parachute, and all of his jigging and stuff. He tries to shut her down. Nice to talk about your right thing, but what does that have to do with this? And she goes, everything. She said, because the last person I met before I arrived here was a woman that was very uncomfortable in our shoes. And the reason was that something that had been put forward to make them much more comfortable and much more wearable had apparently never got to the floor so that they could do the redesign and fix the problem. Now, I fixed this pair for her, and she's very loyal to us. And I already said that she's going to get a 10 or 20% discount on her next pair, and she was overjoyed, and she would be telling people how good our shoes are as long as we fix this problem. Now, when she finished all of this, God had already put it all together. She had written it down, and she realized the common denominator was three names, and this guy that was from another company that was wanting to basically buy them out, but he was crippling them first. And she said, I'm going to end my presentation in a minute, and all these people are going to ask questions and they're going to come at me. I do understand that. She said, there was one other thing that happened just before I arrived here. And she said, I'm a person of faith. If you have a problem with that, it's okay. I don't shove it down people's throats, but God does stand with me. And I ran into somebody that was being fired, and I wondered why this person was being fired. He's our lead designer on our women's shoes. I had a conversation with him, asked him to return and to sit in the lobby until this meeting was over, and that I would pay him twice his normal rate for the day, and of course he's going to stay. And immediately the old CEO stood up and said, "You don't have a right to do that." And she goes, "Well, I do." She said, "It's right here," and she quoted how she was working in the stead of the main manager for that unit, and she could do these things because she was standing in her stead, and she said, I already, sent a text to her and she already agreed. So the guy is downstairs. It's a really nice guy. He really likes my new idea of the ice rose boots. He said that'll sell him really well. He said a little booty thing, which is what you got from the rose within the rose idea that you were studying. That's awesome. He said, I hope I'm still working. And she goes, I believe you will be. And enjoy your like double time and just sit there and wait. And he said, "Oh, I've got things to do. I've got a book here I can draw in." And he said, "I can start working on that idea." I said, and she goes, "Okay." She goes, "That's cool." And he he looks at her and smiles and says, "Good luck in the meeting." She says, "I don't need luck, got God." He smiles. He goes, "Me too." He said, "Apparently God's looking after me as well." So she said, "What does this have all to do with the people sitting in the room?" And she goes, "Well," and at this moment she introduces the owner and she goes, "Yeah, that fellow over there is the owner, and maybe he'll give us some light. And I'm going to finish with this. Everything that is not being done correctly, not being looked after, not doing right, is connected to three names. I'll leave it there." And she stepped back, and the owner walked up, and he went, "Well, there's some things going to change today. One, from this very in-depth report, I'm going to ask her for the names," and she gave them. And he said, "As I thought." He said, "CEO, I've been noticing things. I'm noticing what you're doing, and I don't like it. So you're gone. You've got your normal whatever, little tin gold whatever thing, but you're out of here today, now. In fact, get up and leave, and security will get your things, and you can leave." And he said, "Rah, rah, 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 rah. That's fine. I'm going to prove you're in cahoots with these two over here, and that's espionage, and I can then get the police involved." Immediately, he got up and said, "I'm leaving." So he said, "There still may be charges. So know that." And the two were really wiggly now, and the other guy was going, "Well, I need to leave." And he goes, "No, you don't." He said, "You three," he said, "are going to have a nice talk with the detectives that are standing outside of that door. This little lady, even though she's an assistant to the manager, has shown that there's a fox in the chicken house. A couple of foxes working with the other side. And so you three are now dismissed." And they started to make a crow, and the door opened, and there were police detectives there, and they had to go and talk to them. That was going to be a good talk. And he looked at her and he said, "This is the new CEO." He's been smiling over there since you said that was a good billboard. It was a great billboard. He said, "I don't know why we don't have more of them." And he said, "Because of that guy that's leaving the building right now." So they had an amazing meeting, you know, had a personal phone call with the guy that was selling the sandwiches that had multiple carts, and said that it was all going to be fixed up and that he could start getting those wider rubber holders within 3 weeks. And he was like, "Wow, over the moon. That's awesome." He said, "I can keep making them the way I am for now." He said, "But that's awesome." He liked the price. It was done. By the end of the day, everything was sorted. But it started with everyday miracles, didn't it? You know, the man waiting downstairs, of course, was not fired. Was hired back at a better rate, and he had already drawn out the Ice Rose shoes, branded them, put them all together, and had them ready to go. Industrious artist, designer, and All of this had happened because of multiple everyday miracles. She was promoted. The manager was happy to see her promoted, and the company would go on in the next couple of years of its life doing quite well because people that were standing in faith were leading it, including the owner, who hadn't been at the time of the meeting. That happened over coffee later. So you never know when God is going to show up with everyday miracles such as these. As I said, some of these stories are real, some of them aren't. I'm not always going to tell you which one is which. You can decide. But the reality is, I've changed names of things and shifted things and don't use names very often at all. But the story has a foundation in reality. I will let you know that. So let's leave it there. And we will simply go to a blessing which will be full of joy, full of unexplainable peace, overflowing with abundance and all of the insight and answered questions necessary. And then, yes, and then, whatever that paintbrush in God's hands wish to paint for you, that also, according to God's will and wish, according to your will and wish, it can be. We come before you, Father, and sometimes we don't see all the little tiny intricate miracles you make happen in our life. But this story certainly had a few. Are they every day? I would say so. They can be. They're probably happening for some, and some aren't seeing it the way they require to see it. So let's leave that in that space, push back the enemy so that if it's the first time or the 100th time, they can have communion with you. If it's the first time, teach them the Roman road, teach them the reason that salvation exists and how to believe for a biblical reason. And if it's the 100th time, take them deeper, Father. Storms are coming, storms are rising, but we will continue to speak and move and act in faith because that's what you've given us the ability and boldness to do. And we stand in awe of all that you do. We ask for courage and strength and grace and mercy as we go. And we say thankful, grateful, gratitude, thankful, grateful, gratitude, thankful, grateful, gratitude. Standing in awe and honor, respect, allowing all glory to flow to Father, Spirit, Son. This is, and so this is. So when you rest, rest well. When you wake, wake well. And know that your path is well lit by God. Blessings.